After having studied after having given you a brief introduction about the different functions of management in the first chapter, the 5 functions of management that we spoke about were planning, organizing, staffing, directing and controlling. Now let us know a little more about the first and foremost function of management, that is planning. What is planning? For a layman, what is planning? Planning is deciding in advance what is to be done, how is it to be done, by whom is it to be done, and when is it to be done. Basically, planning is nothing else but deciding onto the future course of action. We take a peep into the future. And we decide in advance that how are we going to deal with the situations that we are going to be faced with in the future. In a layman's language, planning basically bridges the gap between my present position and where I want to be. It bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Presently, if my sales turnover is, let's say, about 5 crores, right, and I want to take up my sales turnovers to about 15 crores, then how am I going to bridge this gap of 10 crores? Planning is going to help me to bridge this gap. Now, planning, if I talk about, it is present everywhere, in all types of organizations, in hospitals, in schools, in government organizations, in non-profit organizations, even at your house, right? It is present everywhere. Planning is present everywhere. Why do we need to plan? क्यों planning की ज़रूरत है? Because future is uncertain. We are not certain that कि जो situation से हम आज deal कर रहे हैं, आने वाले कुछ हफ्तों में भी same situations रहने वाली हैं, right? Because future is highly unpredictable. Therefore, we need to make assumptions. We need to make our own guesswork about the future conditions that we might be facing and plan accordingly so that we are able to deal with those situations in the best possible manner. Planning equips us to deal with these future conditions in the best possible manner. Right? Now, coming to what are the different features of planning? What are the features of planning? Planning is the primary function of management. It is the first and foremost function of management, right? What do we do in planning? In the function of planning, first of all, the broad objectives and goals of an organization, they are determined, right? And then we also develop plans, or we decide onto the course of action that is going to be undertaken so that these organizational goals are achieved effectively and efficiently, right? It basically provides a basis. Planning provides a basis for the other functions of management also. It is only on the basis of the plans, right, or the objectives and the goals laid down under the function of planning that we decide on to the organizational structure. What organizational structure is going to be best suited to achieve the plans, or to achieve the organizational goals or objectives which have been set out, right? Then staffing is also done in accordance with the plans, right? Direction. For directing also, you need to, for directing, what do we do under the function of directing? Basically, directing is all about what you want your men to do, right? And making sure that they do it in the best possible manner. Wherein we translate the goals and objectives set out in the process of planning into the work to be done by the people working in an organization, right? Then we come to controlling. Controlling is all about comparing the actual performance with the standard performance. Standard performance कहाँ से आएगी? That is as per the plans. मतलब standard performance क्या है? हमारी objectives. हम अपनी actual performance को compare करते हैं अपने objectives के साथ, and then we find out deviations in the process of controlling. So basically, controlling is also dependent upon planning. Second, planning focuses on achieving objectives. Before you decide on to the course of action that has to be undertaken, first and foremost thing is you have to set out the organizational goals and objectives. until and unless you have set out a goal and objective, right? How are you going to formulate a course of action that has to be undertaken? So first of all, specific goals are to be defined, which are to be achieved by the organization. Then it is pervasive, meaning it is present. Planning is present in all types of organization and is present at all levels of an organization. Right? It is present. If I talk about hospitals, definitely yes, it's present. In schools, it is present. When you see your diary, right? If you see your school diary, what is it? That's planning, right? Do we not give you in advance about the school functions? We give you a schedule for examination, right? We give you a schedule for your round assessments and your formative and summative assessments. What is that? That is planning. We are peeping into the future and we are deciding in advance that what is to be done in future. Clear? And it is present at all levels of organization. We talk about the top level management, we talk about all levels of management, top level management, middle level management and supervisory. Top level management plans for the organization as a whole. Right? Middle level management, it prepares the departmental plans, and supervisory level of management, it prepares the routine plans. Day-to-day planning, that is done by the supervisory level of management. Then we say planning is a continuous process. It is not that once you have made a plan, your job is over. Because we say that planning is all about predicting future and then deciding onto the course of action. But we say future is highly uncertain, right? We are dealing with the external environment which is highly volatile. So what if the conditions that you had predicted, right, those conditions change or those conditions were not there at all? So you will have to alter your plan. You will have to modify your plan in accordance with the changing situations. So planning is a continuous process which goes on and on and on. Right? Because you have to continuously modify your plans according to the changes taking place in the external environment. Then planning is futuristic in nature. Why is planning futuristic in nature? Because it deals with predicting futures. We have to make certain assumptions and predictions about future and then decide onto the course of action that we are going to undertake in order to achieve the organizational goals. So it is you take a peep into the future. You take a peep into the future and only then you set out your plans, right, for various activities. So that way it is futuristic in nature. Planning involves decision making. After you have set out the organizational goals and objectives, right, you are required to select, right? You are required to make a selection out of the alternative courses of action which are available, right? You may adopt action A, action plan A, action plan B or action plan C, right? You have to decide on to any one, keeping in mind the successful achievement of organizational goals and objectives. Last but not the least, it is a mental exercise. It is a mental exercise. Why? Because it requires sound thinking. It requires more of thinking and sound judgment. It requires thinking and sound judgment. It is more of a thinking function rather than doing function, right? Because here we are planning the course of action. Here we are planning that what is the course of action that we are going to undertake. Now coming to the importance of planning. Right? First one being that planning provides direction. Now, when we say that planning provides direction, right, even it's very important for every organization that there has to be unity. There has to be unity in direction. There has to be unity in direction. That means all the divisions of an organization, they are moving in the same direction. Now, in what direction are they moving? They all are moving towards the accomplishment of the organizational goals. And where are these organizational goals being set up? In the process of planning. So it is because of planning, right? Under planning only, right? The basic broad objectives and goals of an organization are laid down, and all the divisions of an organization, be it a sales department, production department, finance department, marketing department, whichever department we talk about, they all are working towards the successful accomplishment of the organizational goals which are being laid down in the process of planning. So therefore it is rightly said that planning provides direction. Secondly, planning reduces the risk of uncertainty. Now, how will planning reduce the risk of uncertainty? Planning, when we say we plan, we said that we take a peep into the future. We take a peep into the future, we make forecasts, we make assumptions about the future, and we prepare a plan of action. We prepare a plan of action that is to be taken up in the future to deal with the conditions that we are going to be faced with. Right? Now, it is only we are making an assumption we are making certain assumptions about future. Okay? But वो uncertainty रहेगी because future is highly uncertain. I cannot predict future with 100% accuracy. Right? So I cannot eliminate uncertainty, but by predicting future or by making certain assumptions about future, planning is definitely going to equip the managers, right? Equip the managers in a manner that they are able to deal with the uncertain situations in the best possible manner. So planning reduces the risk of uncertainty. It will not reduce uncertainty, or it will not eliminate uncertainty altogether, but it will equip you to deal with that situation in the best possible manner. It reduces overlapping and wasteful activities. Now, after having decided onto the goals and objectives, the broad goals and objectives of the organization, planning stresses on finding out the best course of action to be undertaken. Now, in that course of action, the duties and the areas of responsibility or the plan of action to be carried out by different departments is very clearly defined. It is very clearly defined that what are the main objectives of the production department, sales department ko kya karna hai, marketing department ko kya karna hai, right? So it is never that two departments, are working on one single activity. There is never duplication of effort. If in an organization which is well planned, right, there is never going to be duplication of effort. So there will never be overlapping of any kind of activities. It promotes innovative ideas. Now, how does it promote? Because planning is more of a thinking function. Planning is more of a thinking function that what all steps should I undertake to reach the position where I intend to. Right? So, managers are forced to think differently. They are forced to think of creative and innovative ideas which are going to enable them to reach at the topmost position in a shorter period of time. Right? Last is that planning sets standards for controlling. As I told you, what is controlling? That we compare our actual performance with the objectives which have been laid in planning. We try to see, have we been able to achieve what we had decided at the beginning? If yes, good. If not, then what are the deviations? So, जो हम एक्चुअल परफॉर्मेंस को स्टैंडर्ड परफॉर्मेंस से कंपेयर करते हैं, वो स्टैंडर्ड कहां से आता है कंट्रोलिंग के लिए? प्लानिंग, फ्रॉम प्लानिंग फंक्शन. From the planning function, we have the standard performance and we compare the standard actual performance with the standard performance and find out what are the deviations. Now coming to the limitations of planning. Now, first of all, planning leads to rigidity. Now, there is a tendency, when so much of time has been spent in drawing up a plan, right? So there is a tendency on part of the manager to stick to the plan, right? But in such a case, what happens is, because we are dealing with the external environment which is highly volatile, sometimes when we stick to the same plan because so much of time and money has been spent on the same thing, okay? So it leads to a kind of rigidity. So managers should have that kind of flexibility. Managers should have that kind of flexibility to modify the plans according to the changes in the environment, because it is not in favor of the organization to stick to the same plan even if the conditions or even if the future conditions on the basis of which the future assumptions on the basis of which such a plan was drawn out do not hold true in the present day scenario. Secondly, planning may not work in a dynamic environment. right? We all know the external environment is highly dynamic and volatile. It keeps on changing every now and then, right? So if you are drawing up plans, planning may not work. We don't say that it's not required. It may not work, right? Whatever we plan, we may not be able to do the same thing when the environment is highly volatile. It may not work, but please don't get confused that we do not say that it is not required. Planning is highly required when the environment is dynamic. It reduces creativity. Employees or workers are required to adhere to the plan of action strictly, right? But in doing so, what happens is we are killing their creativity. They do not come up with their own innovative and creative ideas of dealing with things, right? All the time what they are bothered about is to adhering to the planned course of action, right? But in doing so, they lose their own innovation and creativity. It involves huge costs in terms of time and money. A lot of money is spent on hiring experts and professionals who are going to make forecasts about the future on the basis of which the course of action is going to be decided upon. So a lot of money is spent, right? Then it's a time consuming process. Why is it a time consuming process? Because you have to make forecasts about the future, right? And those forecasts have to be accurate, because if those forecasts are not accurate, if they go wrong, then the entire plan drawn out on the basis of those forecasts is going to go wrong, absolutely, right? So in order to make sure that those forecasts they cannot ever be 100% correct, but in order to make sure that those forecasts are as true as possible, you need to spend a lot of time on making such forecasts. So as a result, it becomes a very, very time consuming process, and there is very less time left for its implementation. Last, planning does not guarantee success. Planning is just an exercise which enables an organization to deal with the future conditions in the best possible manner, but it does not guarantee success, that if you have planned in advance, you are going to be successful. Sometimes the best of the plans, if not executed properly, they fail miserably, right? So it does not guarantee success.